Alright, in today's lesson we are going to be continuing with Chapter 6, going over Lesson 4, Simplifying Square Roots. And so two of the key ideas for this lesson are product property of square roots, where you have the square root of x times y equals the square root of x times the square root of y, where x and y are greater than or equal to 0. So an example of what this would look like, the square root of 4 times 3 equals the square root of 4 times the square root of 3. The square root of 4 is 2 times the square root of 3. So that's what that looks like. So that is the product property of square roots. And then we have the quotient property of square roots. And so with this one, it is the square root of x divided by y equals the square root of x divided by the square root of y, where x is greater than or equal to 0 and y is greater than 0. So we have, so you can see what this looks like in numbers. We've got the square root of 7 divided by 9, and that equals the square root of 7 divided by the square root of 9, which equals the square root of 7 divided by 3. 3 is a perfect square, so we can actually figure that one out. And those are the key ideas when we're going to be looking at simplifying square roots for today and tomorrow. Make sure you guys are taking your notes and following along. If you have any questions, get them written down so you can ask me in class tomorrow. So the first thing we're going to look at is adding and subtracting square roots. So this is going to be relatively easy. You can add in or subtract radical expressions the same way you combine terms. So when you're combining like terms like 5x plus 4x, it equals 9x. So basically what you're doing is you're combining like terms. So A wants us to simplify 5 times the square root of 2 plus 4 times the square root of 2. So we take this 5 times the square root of 2 plus 4 times the square root of 2, that's going to equal 5 plus 4 times the square root of 2. That 5 plus 4 is 9. So our final answer is 9 times the square root of 2. Same concept when you're subtracting. So B wants us to simplify 2 times the square root of 3 minus 7 times the square root of 3. So once again, we combine our like terms. So 2 times the square root of 3 minus 7 times the square root of 3. 2 minus 7 times the square root of 3. That 2 minus 7 gives us a negative 5. So our final answer is negative 5 times the square root of 3. And that is adding and subtracting square roots. So our next two examples are going to be using that product property of square roots and the quotient property of square roots because we're multiplying and dividing. So simplifying square roots, for example, 2 and 3. So with example 2, they want us to simplify the square root of 50. And so to simplify the square root of 50, we take the square root of 50, which equals 25 times 2 will equal 50. So we have the square root of 25 times 2. We separate those. We can have the square root of 25 times the square root of 2. We know that the square root of 25 is a perfect square, so our final answer gives us 5 times the square root of 2. And then simplifying square roots using the quotient property of square roots. So this one wants us to simplify the square root of 11 divided by 16. So if we have 11 divided by 16, the square root of 11 divided by 16, we separate those to the square root of 11 divided by the square root of 16. The square root of 16 is a perfect square, so we end up with the square root of 11 divided by 4. And that is simplifying square roots using addition, subtraction, multiplying, and multiplication and division. So we're going to see these in practice with an example for finding volume. So with this question, it wants us to find the volume of the rectangular prism. And our rectangular prism has a length of, or a width of 5, the square root of 5 meters, the width of square root of 10 meters, and then it has a height of square root of 2 meters. So the formula for finding volume, if you remember from last year, is V equals the area of the base times the height. So our base is a rectangle, so we take that length times width. So we multiply the square root of 5 times the square root of 10, and then we multiply that by the square root of 2 for our height. So we can combine those, and we have the square root of 5 times 10 times 2, which gives us the square root of 100. The square root of 100 is 10. So the volume for this rectangular prism is 10 meters cubed. So that is the volume for this rectangular prism. And that is using our simplifying of square roots. So you are going to do your on your own questions, have those done so that we can go over the answers in class tomorrow. And I will see you in class. If you have any questions, I will get those answered, and we'll use the rest of the class time after we go over the on your own questions to do your assignment. So I will see you in class tomorrow.